Hello and welcome to the Steel Lab. All right, today we're going off in a way different direction. We're going to shred the pedal steel. All right, so in recent years, there's been a lot of the younger generation guys came up, especially the ones that came up through the Sacred Steel influence, the Robert Randolphs and some of those young Roosevelt. A lot of guys playing some really wicked cool stuff on the pedal steel these days. And of course, there's always been guys that played rock and roll kind of stuff on the pedal steel, Rusty Young and all these. So this is by no means a new concept to play, heavy metal or rock and roll or hardcore, slidey, bluesy sort of things on the pedal steel. But I just wanted to give you a little rundown on a few of the ideas. If you're not used to approaching the pedal steel from that kind of standpoint, I just wanted to give you a few ideas of some things that might get you started. And one of the things that I want to talk about first is a little bit about the equipment setup that I use. And if you haven't watched it, I did a series called Effective Effects. And if you go back and watch that, you'll find out everything I use in my effects chain. I'm using precisely the same rig that I used in that video there. But the main thing I want to talk about is I use a distortion pedal, and it's the first thing in my chain. I go out of my guitar, into my overdrive or distortion pedal, and then to my volume pedal and everything else. And the reason that's important is because I want my overdrive pedal to get super hot, dirty distortion all the time, and I want to go ahead and make the steel pretty distorted and pretty dirty for this style of playing. So here it is turned on. And if I turn my volume pedal down, it gets quieter, but it stays just as dirty, and that's what I want, right? So before we start thinking about playing this kind of stuff, we kind of have to know what makes music like this sound different than, say, the other kind of styles that we would play on the steel guitar. Why does rock and roll sound different than country? Well, the answer to that is mostly has to do with the fact that rock and roll is kind of minor-based sounding melody lines, oftentimes going on over the top of either minor chords in the background or maybe major chords in the background, but with minor-y sounding stuff over the top. And so we have to kind of start thinking about how to play some scales and note patterns that relate to that sort of idea. And another thing that we have to think about is that a lot of times what we're trying to do here is kind of emulate the way guitar players approach this sort of stuff. So we have to use some of the same tactics that they use. And one of the tactics that they use, and by the way, I think for today, we're gonna take a key that this kind of stuff could very easily happen in. We're not going to learn any specific tune or anything like that. We're just going to work on some ideas about this style. So let's take the key of A. Now, if we were playing country stuff and we played up here at the 5th fret, just our good old A major chord, the problem with that is that major third note in there does not really work so great for the kind of stuff that we're wanting to play. So we have to try to learn to play what guitar players refer to as power chords, where we just take away the third altogether. And so I've got the distortion back on now, and I'm not going to play string 6 or string 3. I'm like right now I'm just going to play strings 8 and 10. Just the root and the 5th. And when we just play the root and the 5th like that, we can take those two notes and kind of start to create some of these scale ideas that might sound kind of rocked out or metally. And one of the things that makes that kind of style of music sound like it does in a lot of cases is something called parallel fifths, where we take those two notes right there and we just move them up and down the neck together. And that could sound like this. Now let's move them up 3 frets, 2 more frets, 2 more frets, without going into too much explanation as to why, that ends up being something called a pentatonic minor scale in parallel fifths, but what it sounds like is heavy metal. See, check it out. And so the thing of it is I made no particular effort to do those notes in any order. I just utilized those two strings and any combination of those spaces for that parallel fifth idea. I could also went down 2 frets. And if you want to get a little rhythmic thing going for something like that, and especially if you're good at the palm blocking technique, if you're not familiar with how to do that, if you watch my 7-point blocking system video, I'll show you how to get a little bit of this action going on, where you can actually rest your palm against that lowest string and start droning your thumb and get a little rhythmic action going. And this starts to sound kind of like the heavy metal gallop thing after a while. And you can just move stuff like that around and get some neat sort of things going on that sound pretty crunchy and heavy, right? But hey, we deal with the pedal steel, and we got all these pedals, and we got levers. How can we incorporate some of those things to make some effective kind of ideas to go along with that? What if we had that rhythm going on, something like that? What would we play over the top of that? Well, we would play the scale that matches up with that, and it's called the pentatonic minor scale. And there's all kind of different ways to play it on the pedal steel, but I'm going to show you one real easy way to play it in the key of A. We're not going to be over the 5th fret like you might think. We're going to be 2 frets below that on the 3rd fret, and we're going to move over to the B and C pedals, and we're going to start with the B and C pedals down and play the 4th string, and now release the pedals, play it again, now put the pedals back in, play the 5th string, release them, play it again, put them back in, play the 6th string, and then play the 7th string. And that's our root note for A. So if we had one of these crazy metal things going on in the background, and we played that series of notes in any combination and any usage of that pedals going in and out, and we could also incorporate just about all the rest of the strings on this fret too, if we wanted to, and we'd end up with something that kind of matched up with that, this sort of thing. No particular order, just little licks, but it sounds like it fits with that sort of thing, right? All right, another idea that we might add in is if we doubled up some notes to get a certain effect, the kind of thing that a guitar player does on a regular basis. In fact, this is sort of the Chuck Berry Johnny B. Good lick. And the way we do that is if you have a lever that lowers your 2nd string a whole step, you reach out there and catch your 1st string and your 2nd string together with that 2nd string lowered all the way, and then with your B pedal already down, the 5th string under it, and add that A pedal. And then we can start going with another little rhythmic thing to get any kind of lick we want out of that. much of that pedal in or out, and as much of this muting as we like. Anything that makes it sound crunchy and rock and rollish, right? Okay, well, there are other things that sound rock and rollish. We want to emulate the kind of things that guitar players do, and one of the things they do is bend strings. Now, we do this with the pedals, but if we wanted to play something that maybe was slightly more authentic sounding, we might play something like this. All right, so what's going on there? We went to a different fret, right? Well, we're going to learn another one of these pentatonic minor scales. This one's still for the key of A. It's up here at the 8th fret, and we have the A pedal down. And in this, on this fret with the A pedal down, we could play anything but the 9th string, and we'd have good usable notes for this style of music. And if we ended on the 10th string, that's actually our root note. That's the note of A. So with the A pedal down on the 8th fret, anything but the 9th string is fair game. All sounds like Eddie Van Ingve, right? Okay, but that little lick we did before where I reached up and pulled that first string, if you're not used to doing that, this is an opportunity to learn how to bend behind the bar. And how far do we pull it? Well, the answer to that is to wherever it sounds like it's the right amount of tension. Just don't pull it so far that you break it. Are you trying to be perfectly in tune? Doesn't really matter for this sort of thing. You're just trying to play something that sounds like a guitar player milking a string. Now, another thing that guitar players do a lot for this style of music is something called hammer-ons and pull-offs. And they do this with their fingers on the neck. We can do it with the tip of the bar. So right now, I've been playing this little thing where I went on those lower strings, but now I'm going to go down here to string 6 and 8 with the pedals down, and that's the same two notes. So it's the same thing as, okay. But now I'm going to use that 6th string, the note of A. It's going to be a pivot point that I'm going to start hammering the bar on and off. And I'm going to start at the 3rd fret. And if you're not used to doing this, you might have to start real slow like this and start working speed up, because eventually what we want to do is go. Okay. And we also want to be able to skip around between some notes like this. Now, I'm taking my picks back here and I'm pick blocking the strings on either side of that so that that string is completely isolated. If the bar happens to stray and hit one of these other ones, it's not going to make any noise. So I can initiate that string, then isolate it, and then use the bar without having to worry about anything else making any noise. Now, that thing we did where we used our finger to bend a string, well, we have the secret weapon of the pedals, so we can do neat tricks like this. We could move up to the 5th string, and I'm going to start. Now, this is still going to be for the key of A, but I'm going to start that 5th string and do that hammer-on thing, and I'm going to slowly add the A pedal in. And back out, and in, and out, and in, and out, and in, and out. And now we just played something that would have made Eddie go, wow, right? So now, another interesting little thing we can do that guitar players like to do is we can employ harmonics. And usually when we think about playing harmonics, we think about, you know, getting around playing pretty little pristine, real crisp, clean bell-like harmonics. But for this style, we want to play something that may be a little more crazy and aggressive. So we can do a little trick where I'm going to be back here in that same position where we played that little scale. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to play that fifth string, and then I'm going to take the fleshy part of my ring finger and an octave higher up here. After I play it, I'm going to brush my finger across it to convert it to a harmonic. And the only thing that makes this possible is the distortion having so much gain. You'd probably never get this to work if you didn't have the distortion just cranked up. And I don't always get it to work myself. The beauty of this little trick is, if it works, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But I'm going to see if I can get this to work. So I just played a note and then converted it to a harmonic by brushing my finger across it. So now we're going to combine that with the left hand move to where as soon as I do that, I'm then going to move the bar up to that same fret. A big, crazy, dramatic thing, right? And it's not difficult to play. You just have to make sure that there's enough gain going on so that you don't squash that string when you brush it, that you convert it to that harmonic. You can play it, let the pedal off, let it off, and then go up. Any number of interesting combinations that can happen for that sort of thing. All right, now, another thing that we can do is play stuff that is so chromatic that it wouldn't matter whether we played the right note or not. And a real easy way to accomplish that, here's our little pattern again. All right, if we were to move up one fret and lower the E strings, and then add the A pedal, this note now is still our root. And the two notes directly below it are now chromatically next to each other. So this is going to go half step, half step. Now, here's the crazy thing about this. If we just assign a finger to each one of those strings and start some kind of roll pattern thing, I don't care what it is. Any sequence you want, anything that comes out, now we can move that around. And if you happen to have any speed, the faster the better. And when I say move it, what's the target? It makes no difference. So check this out. Here's our little pattern. Here's that chromatic idea. I never played the same thing twice. I never knew what was going to come out. The only thing that I knew for certain was that chromaticism would always work. Okay, so this is the ultimate cheat for I need to fill up 2 measures of something in a metal tune. All right, so all those are like little ideas to get us around just through some ideas of how to get the steel to make different kinds of sounds and different kinds of ideas to kind of help us navigate the world of playing more in line with the world of hard rock, heavy metal, or the sacred steel sort of thing, stuff like that. So go off, have fun with these ideas, and we'll see you next time in the Steel Lab.
See the equipment our pros use at the best prices anywhere online. Support small business and save.